Something's happening. Something is shifting all around the world. It's a new kind of protest movement. It's digitally native, leaderless, and incredibly fast. And it's challenging governments everywhere. It's all being led by Gen Z, a generation that literally grew up online. So we're going to dive into how they organize, what they're fighting for, and why the old rules of power, well, they might not apply anymore.
So, take a look at this. It really sets the scene. In 2025, a wave of youth-led protests just swept the globe. And what's really remarkable isn't just the individual protests themselves, but the fact that they all seem to erupt at the same time. It's like an entire generation, connected by the same frustrations and the same digital tools, just decided to rise up all at once in places like
Nepal, where a digital firestorm that was organized in chat rooms literally toppled the government in less than 48 hours.
Then you have Kenya, where young people used hashtags to flood social media and the streets and managed to shut down a really controversial finance bill.
In Madagascar, weeks of non-stop protests, both online and offline, actually forced the president out of power.
And in Indonesia, anger over the cost of living and special perks for politicians boiled over into deadly protests.
Even in Peru, outrage over a single pension law just exploded into this huge nationwide movement against corruption. So you see the pattern here? These aren't just random events, they're all connected. To really understand that common thread, we've got to look at the playbook they're all using.
Okay, so let's zoom in. To really get how this works, we're going to look at Nepal. What happened there was, well, it was wild. It unfolded so fast, and it gives us this perfect window into the new digital playbook. And believe it or not, the whole thing kicked off in a pretty unlikely place, a chat room.
So for anyone who doesn't know, what is Discord? Well, it's basically a communication app. It's hugely popular with video gamers. The key thing here is that it lets you create these anonymous communities, they're called servers, where you can chat freely. And in Nepal, those servers became the digital headquarters for an entire revolution. I mean, just look at this timeline. This shows you just how explosive this new kind of protest can be. On the morning of September 8th, everything starts out peacefully. But by that afternoon, police clash with protesters, and the whole conversation online just flips. It turns violent. And by the very next day, we're talking widespread arson, vandalism, and the government was gone. The whole thing took less than 48 hours. It's insane.
And this is what's so telling. This is how it was supposed to go. If you look at the messages, the plan was totally peaceful. Protesters were told, hey, show up in your school and college uniforms, right? A really clear symbol that this was a non-violent, youth-led thing. But yeah, that's not what ended up happening.
Because then, just a few hours into the protest, this message pops up on Discord. And wow, that is such a jarring shift, right? From school uniforms to Molotov cocktails. This is the exact moment you can pinpoint where the digital conversation just tipped over into chaos. And from that point on, the platform basically became a digital war room. I mean, we're not talking about people just venting their anger anymore. No, these anonymous users were actively planning. They were talking about attacking leaders' homes, coordinating how to burn the parliament building, even trying to smuggle guns from India. They were sharing instructions on how to make Molotovs and napalm. The anonymity of it all just opened the door for this shocking level of violent coordination.
And then there's this, which is kind of wild. The symbol that started popping up, uniting protesters not just in Nepal, but in Indonesia and other places, it's a pirate flag from a Japanese manga called One Piece. In the story, it stands for this crew of rebels fighting against a corrupt world government. So you have this piece of pop culture that's suddenly been repurposed into a global icon for revolution. Pretty amazing. Okay, so we've seen the how, right? We've seen the digital tools, these really unexpected pop culture symbols. But that brings us to the bigger question. What about the why? What are the deep-seated issues that are really fueling this global fire?
Right, so why is this happening everywhere and all at once? I think that's the central question here. Because, every protest has its own local spark, right? It might be a new tax or a power cut or some political scandal. But when you look closer, the underlying anger, it's remarkably similar, no matter which country you're talking about.
And what it boils down to is this. Across all these different countries, young people feel this deep, shared frustration. They're looking at their futures and seeing economic uncertainty. They're watching leaders get rich off corruption, and they feel totally, completely shut out of a political system that just feels broken.
And look, this isn't just a vague feeling of anxiety. The numbers are absolutely staggering. In a place like Djibouti, you've got over 76% of young people who can't find a job. In South Africa, it's over 60%. I mean, that is the stark economic reality that's the backdrop for all this anger. So what happens when they do speak out? Well, often the response is violent. This quote here from Derry, a 25-year-old student in Indonesia, really hits the nail on the head. He says the brutal repression isn't random. It's a symptom of a state that fears its own people. And that's a feeling you hear over and over again. They don't see the state's crackdown as a sign of strength. They see it as a sign of fear. And that really explains why they risk so much just to be seen, to be visible. Like this protester in Madagascar put it, silence protects the oppressors, while visibility protects the people. In our digital world, getting your story out there for the whole world to see, that's their best shot at protection. Sometimes it's the only thing they've got.
All right, so let's put it all together. You've got this digitally native generation, and they're using a totally new playbook. So how are traditional governments, with their old-school tools of control, supposed to respond, especially to a challenge they, frankly, don't seem to understand at all?
And this right here, this shows the fundamental mismatch. On one side, you've got these nimble, decentralized movements that can mobilize in literally a matter of hours. On the other side, you've got states using these blunt, old-school tools, shut down the internet, arrest a bunch of people, use brute force. But the thing is, those tactics, they usually just backfire and make people even angrier.
So where is all this digital organizing actually happening? Let's take Kenya's finance bill protests as an example. Twitter, or X, was basically the command center. It accounted for 45% of the mobilization, and you can't ignore TikTok, coming in at 30%. It's become this absolutely vital tool for telling stories visually and just reaching a massive young audience.
And this is how it looks in practice. You get these simple, super powerful hashtags like #RejectFinanceBill. They become rallying cries. They let thousands of people coordinate with each other in real time, and it creates this single, unified story that completely sidesteps the traditional, state-controlled media. So what we're really witnessing here is a fundamental clash, isn't it? You have a generation of digital natives rewriting the rules of protest, literally in real time, and the old institutions of power, they are just struggling to keep up. So the big question isn't just, can governments adapt? It's bigger than that. Is this the start of a whole new, permanent era of global instability, all fueled by digital tools? And honestly, that's the question nobody has an answer to yet.